In this lesson, I'm going to do a full editing demonstration to put together everything you've learned so far in this class. So I want to reset this photo to scratch, so I can choose Shift R or click this button to revert to original. So starting with my workflow, the first thing I always do is crop my photos. So using the crop tool, I'm going to adjust the aspect ratio to 16:9. It's my favorite aspect ratio, specifically because I come from a video background and I just love having that 16:9 widescreen format, perfect for using as a desktop screensaver or putting on my phone. Then I'm going to rotate just slightly because it feels a little bit off. Something like that. I don't want to make it flat because I know that this part of the road is higher than that part, but just trying to get it balanced on this front side of the road and this front side too. And then also maybe cropping in just a little bit so that the road just barely touches the edge of each frame. Okay, pressing the return key, we are locked in and loaded and ready to go. So the first thing I like to do is make sure my white balance is good. So under white balance or under color, we have white balance. We can go through these presets, maybe choose auto. I definitely sense that it's a little bit warmer than I want. I can use other things to cool down the sky, but I am just going to go ahead and let's try our color picker. Pick something like this gray right here, which is the street, which should be a pretty much neutral color, unsaturated. And that actually looks pretty good. Cool, so I'm happy with that. I'm gonna leave the color mixer for now. Maybe actually I'll go into the blue and see what happens if I boost the blue saturation. Yeah, that's pretty good. Usually I like to do this after I do my exposure adjustments, but that looks pretty good. Awesome, so now I'm gonna go into my exposure adjustments. This has a wide contrast of exposures in this image. You can see from the histogram, it goes from basically pure black to pure white. I do like the contrast, but I also want to bring back some of that information, especially in the highlights here in the road. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to bring down the highlights and maybe play around with the whites to see what that does. Actually, I think that bringing down the highlights and bringing up the whites are really this bright part of the headlights right here, which I don't mind being overexposed at all. I think it's fine if those are overexposed, and I can't really bring back any information from them anyways because they are so bright. So I'm happy with that. I do just like playing with the shadows just to see, do I want to have more information in the shadows? Not. Make it a little bit more contrasty. I actually think I am happy with how it was before. I might go into my point curve. So I'm going to choose my point curve and just see about adding a little bit of contrast this way. I could use the slider up here, but I like using the point curve to get super precise. So that's looking pretty good. I'm happy with that. Next, let's go under our effects. So my choice right now is, do I want this to have like a grungy look, everything sharp, or do I want to have it clean and do some noise reduction? And the reason I'm thinking about that right now is because I'm using this clarity slider. If I increase this clarity, I get this very sort of grungy look, which I think is actually pretty cool. If I want to decrease that, I can get sort of a washed out look. I don't get as much detail. But this would be good if I do want to decrease some of that noise reduction later. I think for this edit, I am going to be grungy. I'm going to get this clarity, boost the clarity up. But you know what? After doing this, I don't like the clarity in the sky. I like it on the road. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a linear filter in a second to add that clarity to the bottom. For now, I'm not going to add any clarity to the whole picture. I'm not going to dehaze it. No, not at all. A vignette, maybe adding a little bit of a vignette. I want to boost the feathering of it. We already have such a vignette from this lens and just the darkness around this curve, so that's fine like that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I don't want to add any grain to it. Now with the split toning, I did kind of like what I did before where I made the highlights a little bit warmer. Right now it's a little too cool. So I am going to take not my shadows, my highlights, warm them up just a bit. I could make them super red to kind of add to that red tail light, or more yellow. Something like that. And I can turn it on and off, just this effect, with that button right there to see how that looks. And I like it. I don't want to go too crazy. Something like that. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that. All right, so that's our effects tab. Let's go on to detail. I might apply a little bit of noise reduction to the overall image just to get rid of some of that luminance noise in the sky. Even though we're adding some of that grittiness with the clarity slider, I still want to get rid of some of that noise in the sky. For optics and geometry, I'm going to leave those. I like how my lens looks. I'm not going to try to quote unquote fix it. All right, so next what I want to do is apply that clarity to the street with a linear gradient. So if I check that, let's reset all these. Now let's create a gradient for the bottom half of the image, something like that. Remember, if we hover over the center, we can see what we are selecting. Something like that's pretty good. Now let's increase the clarity. So now we are making that street super grungy, which I like. When I do that, it gets a little bit too dark, boosting that contrast of the street. So let's see what happens if I boost the exposure. Ooh, that's looking pretty cool. Let me see if I just boost the shadows, because I don't want to boost the highlights that much more. And I don't necessarily want to boost the blacks because that looks a little faded out and I don't like that. Yeah, that's looking cool. Awesome. So that's cool for the bottom half, but what about the sky? I feel like the sky is not playing as important of a role in the story of this photo as it could. So I'm going to just click and create another gradient filter going from top to bottom. Let's reset these settings. And let's think about this. What would make this sky a little punchier? Maybe increasing the exposure, maybe if it was a little bit more blue even. So if we take this temperature and drag to the left even more, we can get this night sky to look really, really blue, which might be kind of cool. Maybe boosting the shadows just a little bit so that the sky is a little bit more pronounced. When I do that, the vignette around the edge starts to look a little bit too vignette-y to me. So I don't know if that's a word, but I might go back and decrease that vignetting in just a second. Let me try dehaze, which will actually increase the saturation and also a little bit of the clarity of the stars. I don't want necessarily the clarity, but dehazing helps a little bit. Saturation, I don't think I'm going to do for this image. Sharpness, nah, but that's looking pretty good. If I delete this and then undo, you can see the before and after, which I think looks pretty good. Now let me just look at this. I do want to get rid of parts of this gradient filter where these hills are so that these effects aren't applying as much to the hills. So let's go to our eraser. I've got my flow and density all the way up to 100 so that it really erases. Same within these trees over here. So if I hover over this, we can see our selection. Let's drop our density and flow and just go over the edge a little bit of these hills. Blend it in just a little bit more. Just keep painting over until it looks a little bit better. Yeah, that looks a little bit better to me. Now let's see the before and after. Before, after, before, after. I think it's looking pretty good. Let's go back to our overall adjustments. Go back to the effects, the vignette, which I think I'm going to decrease just a little bit. And overall, I might just boost the exposure a little bit. It just all feels a little bit too dark. So there we have the before, after, everything's looking pretty good. And I'm happy with this photo. I am ready to share this, so I'm gonna go ahead and click my share button, save to. We're going to not resize it. We'll do full size. We're going to save it there. Let's go to our Finder. In our editing, Lightroom CC, edits. And there we have our photo. Looking pretty good. There are a couple tweaks, maybe those brushes I could have fixed a little bit better. But overall, I like this sort of grungy feel. It looks cool. The colors are very vibrant compared to the original, and I'd be happy sharing this online. Thanks so much for watching. If you took a chance and edited this photo, we'd love to see how you came up with a specific style of your own. Post it online, post it to the course, and we can't wait to see it.